Hello. So, in this presentation, we'll be focusing on the concepts of family, the meaning, definition, characteristics, and functions and types of family, and then the concept of marriage, meaning, definitions, characteristics, functions, and types of marriage. And then we'll also be focusing on marriage and family among Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. And then we'll be focusing solely on the concept of kinship, the kinship terms that which are commonly used, kinship usages, and kinship variations in the northern zone, southern zone, central zone, and the eastern zone of India. And then we'll be focusing on the kinship symbols that which are commonly used. Starting with the concept of family. Now, family is the basic unit of society. It is the first and the most immediate social environment to which a child is exposed. And it is in the family that a child learns language, the behavioral patterns, and social norms, which become a part and parcel of his or her life. And in some way or the other, family is a universal group. It exists in tribe, in rural and urban communities, and also among the followers of all religions and cultures. Further, it provides the most enduring relationship, and from the moment of birth to the moment of death, the family exerts a constant influence upon its members. Now, despite the universal and permanent nature of the family, one can also see a vast difference in its structure in different societies. For example, in tribal and agrarian societies, people of several generations live together, and sociologically, such families are called as joint families. Whereas in industrial societies, the family is limited to husband, wife, and their children, and it is termed as nuclear family. So, family is a reproductive or a biological unit, and hence, family is composed of a man and a woman having socially approved sexual relationship, which in turn gives a legit identity to their offsprings. And as a social unit, family is identified as a group of persons of both sexes related by marriage, blood, or adoption, performing roles based on age, sex, and relationship, and socially distinguished as making up a single household or a sub household. So the term family is derived from the Latin word familis, which means a servant, and in Roman law, the word denotes a group of producers and slaves and other servants, as well as members connected by common descent or marriage. Thus, family consisted of a man and a woman with a child or children and servants. Now, if we take up the definitions of family, according to Burgess and Locke, family is a group of persons united by the ties of marriage, blood, or adoption, constituting a single household, interacting and intercommunicating with each other in their respective social roles of husband and wife, father and mother, son and daughter, brother and sister, creating a common culture. And another simple definition of family by Eliot and Merrill: Family is a biological social unit composed of husband, wife, and children. So that is the basic idea of family. Now, further moving towards the characteristics of family, universality. Now, families are found in all societies across the world, and there can be no society without family. Emotional bonds. Now, there is a strong and intimate relationship between the members of the family, and they form the support system of the family members at all stages of life. Socialization. So, socialization is a process of transferring values, cultures, traditions to the younger ones by the elder ones. And it helps in modifying as well as correcting the behavior of the individuals and helping them to create a socially acceptable personality. Further, family is about shared responsibilities. So the responsibilities are shared amongst the family members on the basis of their age and for instance, like parents taking care of the needs of the children and elders or elder sibling taking care of the younger sibling and so on. So this shared responsibility strengthens the bond of the family members. So they are some of the characteristics of family. Now, if we look at the functions of the family, family performs quite a lot of functions, and one is the procreation and rearing. So, family is not just about procreation, but it is also about bringing up the children in a right way, fulfilling their essential needs or catering to their essential needs for survival, and looking after their overall well being, followed by socio-economic security. So, family caters to the socio-economic security needs of the members by providing the secure environment for development and also by providing them with education, health, and all other basic needs that which is essential for the overall development of each member of the family. Family also determines the status of the members. So family provides established status to its members. It could be the family name, identity, etc. So it is through this family the members of the particular family are recognized in the society. Further, socialization, as already said before, it helps the child learn good behaviors and also differentiate between good and bad behaviors and to alter or modify the behaviors accordingly. It also helps the child to understand what is expected from him or her or what is accepted of him or her, thus making one socially acceptable individual. Further, psychological support. So, family is the place where one can share and care, and it is one of the space which is trusted by its members, and individuals also uh, sorry, feel free to share their feelings, emotions, etc. And family caters to the psychological needs of the members at all times, and especially during the times of crisis. And more importantly, it also shows or teaches the value of sympathy, empathy, and altruistic behavior, etc. Further, moving with social control. Now, social control, family regulates the behaviors of the family members, and family act as an informal agent of social control by teaching the moral and ethical values, and by punishing and also suppressing the negative behaviors of the family members, and also correcting the behavior at the same time, and teaching them the accepted norms and values of a society, of the country, and thus making them eligible to live in the larger world. Further, the educational functions. So, family provides the educational requirements, or it caters to the educational requirements that are required for the formal growth and development of the children, and thus helping them to be prepared and to be ready to lead the future course of life. And recreational functions. Now, traditionally, family used to cater to the recreational needs of its members, like family get togethers, family games, family outings, family plays, dramas, etc. But today, the recreational aspect is outsourced to the external agencies like the movies, the parks, etc. So today, the recreational functions performed by the family are comparatively less, but it's still there. And then coming to the types of family, basically you can find patriarchy and matriarchy. So patriarchy is where the father is the head of the family, or it is the elder male member who is generally the head of the family. Whereas in matriarchy, it is mother who is the head of the family, or the elder female member of the family becomes the head, who control the various aspects of the family and also the life of the individual members there. And in terms of residence, there are two types, patrilocal and matrilocal. So patrilocal is where the wife usually shifts her residence after marriage towards her husband's place, whereas in matrilocal residence, the wife remains at her own residence even after her marriage, and the husband pays a visit towards his wife's residence. And further, in terms of descent, you have patrilineal and matrilineal families. So in patrilineal, the descent is traced through the father's line or male member's line, and in matrilineal, the descent is traced through the mother's line or female line. So the sharing of property and all other family matters are determined on the basis of this patrilineal or matrilineal descent. Further, you have joint family and nuclear family. Now, joint family, where people belonging to three or more generations live under one roof, sharing the common way of life. And it was a common system in the traditional societies of India. But due to the impact of Western education, industrialization, modernization, etc., gradually the structure of joint families started deteriorating, and it led to the creation of nuclear families. Now, in nuclear family, basically, it is made up of husband, wife, and their unmarried children. And then finally, you have family of orientation and family of procreation. So, family of orientation is the family to which the individual is born. You have the parents there, you have the siblings, etc. And family of procreation is the family that which one creates or establishes after marriage. So, moving on with the concept of marriage. So it could be said that the survival of society depends upon the biological reproduction. And in fact, the population is the cornerstone of all kinds of social organization. And biologically, the institution of marriage arises from the facts of human procreation and rearing of children. And thus, Westermarck opines that marriage is ingrained in family rather than family in marriage. So, the institution of marriage has its roots in the ancient histories of almost all cultures and societies, and it is the fundamental and universal institution which organizes social life. And further, marriage can be conceptualized in three ways: first, as an institution; second, as a rite or ritual; and third, as a process. So, as an institution, marriage consists of a set of patterned behaviors, expectations, and relationships that which are organized and endued over time. And as a rite or ritual, marriage includes the ceremonies through which marriage status is achieved. And further, as a process, it is a phenomenon which is marked by gradual changes that lead to ultimate dissolution either through separation, divorce, or death. And further, marriage results in the establishment of family and kinship relations, and it marks the beginning of long term alliance between two families in economic as well as social spheres. And these relationships form a network of bonds which are of varied proximity and intensity. So it could be said that marriage is a socially sanctioned union between a man and a woman, which is accomplished by culture specific rituals and ceremonies. That is, it is a socially approved way through which families are established. It is viewed as the most important event in the life of an individual between birth and death, and it also signifies the transition into adulthood. So, according to the definition of marriage by Westermarck, marriage is a relation of one or more men and women which is recognized by custom or law and involves certain rights and duties, both in the case of the parties entering the union and in the case of children born of it. Marriage permits sex relations between husband and wife, and these relations are legitimized by the society. And according to Malinowski, marriage is a contract for the production and maintenance of children. And then moving on with the characteristics of marriage. Universality. Marriage is a universally found institution that is found across all societies, all over the countries, in the entire world. And it is a relationship between a man and woman. And further, marriage requires social approval. That is, a union between a man and woman becomes marital bond only when it gets societal approval. And marriage is associated with some civil or religious ceremony. So each religion have their own customs and traditions in the performance of marriage, and they follow it. And marriage also creates mutual obligations. So marriage imposes certain rights and duties on both the husband and wife, and both are required to support each other. So it helps in the creation of an environment for the long-lasting bond between the couples. So those are few characteristics of marriage. And moving on with the functions of marriage. So marriage results in the formation of a family. It is license for sexual gratification and procreation of children, and it also provides socio-psychological and economic security. Now, social is a marriage or a bond between two people, men and women, becomes legal when it is societally accepted. So, social acceptance is the key for the marriage, and psychological support are provided by the partners during all stages of life if they have a healthy relationship between them, and economic cooperation between the partners for various aspects of the family life together. So those are characteristics, functions, and definition of marriage. So now let's look at the motivations in marriage. So in early periods, an individual married because of the practical problems related to getting a living. And these practical problems were that people wanted children for economic reasons. They wanted them as an insurance against wants when parents could no longer work for themselves. And further, they also wanted more women to work on the fields. But this does not mean that there was no love or companionship in early marriages, but practical reasons were more important. And today, in modern societies, these practical reasons for marriage have been relegated to a minor position, and the main motivations of today's life are believed to be escape from the feelings of loneliness and for the purpose of living through others. And in simple words, the object of marriage today appears to be companionship. And in 21st century, it could be various other reasons, hidden agendas, etc. So now let's focus on the rules of marriage. Endogamy. This rule has been existent since early Indian history. And according to the rule of endogamy, one person has to marry with one's own group, that is, caste, subcaste, tribe, etc. And this practice or this rule is followed even in today's societies. And second, exogamy. So it is a rule of marriage in which one man or woman marries outside one's own group, as it forbids the marital bonds between relatives. And there are two types of exogamy. They are Sapinda exogamy, and according to Brahaspati, offsprings from five maternal generations and seven paternal generations are Sapinda, and they cannot intermarry. That is, they are relatives. And Sagotra exogamy, that is, members of the same Gotra are believed to have descended from the common mythical ancestor, and thus they cannot intermarry. And then we have hypergamy or anuloma marriage. So it is a form of marriage in which a boy from an upper caste marries a girl from lower caste. And then it is followed by hypogamy or pratiloma marriage. So it is a form of marriage in which a man of a lower caste marries girl of an upper caste. Now such marriages were not accepted in traditional societies. And even today we find rare acceptance of such relations. And then moving on with the forms of marriage. So, in forms, you have polygamy, that is, a man or woman having more than one spouse at the same time. And polygamy can be further classified into two types as polyandry. So, it is the marriage of one woman with two or more than two men. And it is further divided into fraternal polyandry, that is, in this kind, the husbands are invariably brothers, and then non fraternal polyandry, where the husbands are not related as brothers, and then levirate, that is, marrying the deceased husband's brother. And then there is polygyny. So, in this type of marriage, man marries more than one woman at the same time, and it is also divided into sororal polygyny, that is, a type of marriage in which the wives are related or are invariably sisters, and non sororal polygyny, in which the wives are not related as sisters, and then sororate, that is, marrying deceased wife's sister. And then there is monogamy, which is commonly found in the societies today, and it is the form of marriage in which one man marries one woman, and it is the legally accepted and the most ideal form of marriage since it contributes to a stable family. According to Horton and Hunt, marriage is the approved social pattern whereby two or more people establish a family. So, generally, the concept of marriage comprises a much deeper relationship than just a union between a man and woman. It is one of the most important or basic institution for the continuity of human race and more importantly for the formation of companionship. Marriage among Hindus is a sacrament and not a contract. Hence it is considered as a sacred relationship. It is meant for the continuation of family as well as for the practice of dharma. The basic belief amongst the Hindus is that the marriage relationship extend beyond one's life, and that is, marital bonds are eternal, and traditionally, the bride and the bridegrooms were considered as divinities. So, marriage in Indian society is almost obligatory, and an average Indian cannot avoid marriage, especially due to the social stigma attached to those who remain unmarried. And further, in Indian society, marriage is also linked to the identity of a woman, and it is considered as a sign of status to be a married woman. And then it is also linked to the social obligation, traditional values, and kinship bonds. And because of all these aspects, marriage is fundamental to the Hindu social organization. As a sacrament, there are various essential ceremonies and beliefs associated with Hindu marriage. and a marriage is said to be completed only after the performance of the sacred rites accompanied by the sacred mantras. And according to Ramanuja, Hindu marriage is sacred for various reasons. Firstly, dharma. Now, it is the first aim of the Hindu marriage, that is, the performance of religious duty. Secondly, the performance of religious and sacred rites such as Homa, Kanyadana, Panigraha, Saptapadi, etc. And further, these rites are performed before the Agni, considered to be the sacred god, by the recitation of mantras from the Vedas by a Brahmin priest. Thirdly, the union was considered to be indissoluble and irrevocable, and further, husband and wife are bound to each other not only until death but also even after. Fourthly, the stress was laid on the chastity of a woman and the faithfulness of a man. Fifthly, it was also believed that a man performed several sacraments during the course of his life, whereas a woman performed only one sacrament of marriage in her life, and thus it was of great importance for her. And finally, the Hindu philosophy also considered marriage as a social duty towards the family and the community, and there was little idea of individual interest and aspirations. Then, further, the Hindu philosophies opine that a man can be perfect and complete only if he has a wife and children. That is, a man could not practice artha and kama as laid down by the Purushartha without the cooperation of his wife, and he also could not perform some of the sacrifices without a wife. And then Grihastha is considered to be an important ashrama, and it is in this ashrama procreation takes place, which ensures the continuity of the human race. So, among Hindus, marriage is obligatory for begetting a son, and it is essential for discharging of his debts to his ancestor and also for performing religious and spiritual duties. So, according to Manu, considered to be the Hindu lawgiver, widow remarriages, as a rule, were not recognized in the Hindu law, as the union between a male and female was considered to be eternal, and once a girl was given in marriage, it becomes the responsibility of a true wife to preserve the chastity not only during the survival of her husband but even after his death. But it has to be observed here that such rule was not applicable to men, and he was allowed or permitted to remarry immediately after the death of his wife. Now, traditionally, the marriage was considered to be an indissoluble union, and it was only in some exceptional cases that the sage allowed a woman to abandon her husband and take another, like the cases of impotency, if proved, infidelity if proved, or any incurable diseases. Now, Vashishta, the oldest rishi, opines that remarriages could only be permitted if the damsel, that is, the young unmarried woman, was abducted and not married according to the sacred rites. And if the husband died before the consummation of marriage. So, coming to the objectives or aims of Hindu marriage. Firstly, the fulfillment of dharma. That is, it is only through marriage an individual could find right means of fulfilling his religious duty, followed by praja, that is, procreation or progeny. It was obligatory on part of the couples to provide a new generation to the society, and importance was attached to male child, that is, the male child preference, as it was imposed by the scriptures that only a male child could perform the rituals of the dead, and only if performed by the son one could attain salvation. And then rati, that is sexual pleasure or kama. The Hindu scriptures have associated the sexual pleasure with the realization of the divine bliss, and according to Vatsyayana, the author of Kama Sutra, rati is one of the primary aim of Hindu marriage. Now, of all these, dharma was given greater importance, followed by procreation and sex gratification. And then coming to Purusharthas. Now, they are the basic aims of human life. There are four: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So, Dharma is the righteousness, performance of the duty. Artha is acquisition of wealth and worldly prosperity, such as status, authority, power, positions, etc. Kama is satisfying the innate desires and drives of man, and moksha is attainment of salvation. And then Saptapadi. So these are seven steps around the fire. Now, these seven steps are the promises the couple make as they complete each full circle. Now, while the couple are taking the rounds, the priest recites the mantras pertaining to each specific steps. Generally, the groom takes the hand of his bride and leads her for the first four steps, and then they switch sides, and the bride finishes the last three steps by leading him to the completion of the rituals. Now, each of these steps signify a specific meaning for both bride and groom, that is, complementary meanings that ensure they will work as a unit to make the marriage a successful, healthy, and prosperous one. Now, roughly, each step has different purpose or different meanings, and they are to provide for household, good health, to carry out duties and responsibilities, for mental and spiritual well being, wealth and comfort by righteous means, for knowledge, happiness, mutual love and respect and trust, for a family of healthy children, for healthy and long lives, and for remaining true companion to each other. So then, there are traditional forms of Hindu marriage. According to the Hindu scriptures, there are basically eight traditional forms. And the first one is Brahma Vivaha. So here, the marriage is fixed by the parents. A Brahmin priest presides over the marriage to perform the rites, and the daughter is given by the father to the groom along with the dowry. It is followed by Daiva Vivaha. Here, the girl is given as a gift to the Brahmin who officiates the ceremony. So the daughter is well decorated with jewels and handed over to the priest who comes in to officiate the ceremony. And then Arsha Vivaha. Here, the father gives away the bride to the groom in exchange of a pair of cattle or two. And then Prajaptya Vivaha. So, in this form of marriage, the consent of the parents are essential, and here the bride and the groom both are very young at the time of marriage, and the bride's father gives his daughter as a gift to the groom's father and not to the groom. So the protection of the daughter is handed over to the groom's father during the Panigraha ceremony. And then Gandharva Vivaha. So this form of marriage was the result of mutual affection and love of the bride and the bridegroom. So here neither the consent of the parents are necessary nor the rights or dowry, but only the will of the marrying parties are given given importance. So this type of marriage is believed to have emerged from the desire, and it has uh, sorry it has sexual gratification as its chief purpose. So this type of marriage today is also termed as love marriage. And then Asura Vivaha. So here the groom is not suitable for the bride, and generally the groom belongs to the lower social rank than the bride, and the groom has to give as much wealth as he can afford to the bride's parent. That is basically called as bride price has to be paid to get the girl's or bride's hand. And then Rakshasa Vivaha. So here the marriage is usually by capture or abduction without obtaining the consent of the girl or her parents. Here the groom takes away the bride from her house forcibly after killing or injuring the girl's family. So this was practiced in time when group conflicts, wars, etc. were common, and the victorious group used to carry away the girls of the conquered group and keep them as keeps. And finally, Paishacha Vivaha. So in this type of marriage, a man enters into a sexual relationship with a sleeping or drunk or unconscious woman, or in a circumstances where she is not in a position to defend or to protect herself. And usually such acts were regularized after the performance of marriage ceremony, that which usually took place after the sexual intercourse between the man and women. Now here the first four forms, that is Brahma, Daiva, Arsha and Prajaptya. These forms were regarded as the desirable form of marriage in the Sutra and the Smriti period, and the other forms of marriage were regarded as undesirable. And in today's society, the Brahma Vivaha is considered as the most preferable form of marriage. So, as a social institution, marriage lays down the rules and regulations which have religious sanctions, and they are to regulate the behavior and relations between husband and wife, and also it becomes their duty to abide by the rules and regulations, and at the same time, it was also the duty of the husband and wife to bring up their children according to the expectations of the society. Now, coming to the aspect of divorce. So, it is generally believed that Hindu marriage, being a sacrament, cannot be easily dissolved, and it was also an eternal union of a man and woman. And according to Ramahuja, till the mid of the 1950s, the Hindu law did not permit divorce, though in some castes the local customs did sanction the dissolution of marriage by mere payment of a sum, which was decided by the caste elders. So, a divorce refers to the legal termination of the marital ties. Now, Kautilya sanctioned divorce only in four non-religious marriages, that is, Asura, Gandharva Vivaha, Paishacha Vivaha, and Rakshasa Vivaha, on grounds like bad character, unknown whereabouts, endangering spouse's life, etc. But mutual consent was necessary for dissolving the marital ties. And he also says that, that is Kautilya, he says that a woman hating her husband could not dissolve the marriage with him against his will, nor could a man dissolve his marriage with his wife against her will. Further, in case of divorce, a man was to return to his wife whatever she has given at the time of marriage, and women should also forfeit her claims in husband's property. So that was the traditional way of separation or termination of the marriage. And then the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, amended in 1978 and again in 1986. So this act permits judicial separation as well as the annulment of marriage, and either party can seek judicial separation on any one of the following grounds, like desertion for a continued period of 2 years, or a cruel treatment, or leprosy, or adultery. And then the annulment of marriage may be on the grounds where the spouse must have been important at the time of marriage and continues to be so, where the party to the marriage was an idiot or a lunatic at the time of marriage, where the consent of the petition or of the guardian was obtained by force or fraud, but the petition presented on this ground shall not be entertained after 1 year of marriage. And if the wife was pregnant by some person other than the petitioner at the time of marriage. So that is about annulment of marriage. And then the dissolution of the marriage can be on the grounds of adultery, conversion of religion, unsound mind, leprosy, desertion for 7 years or beyond that, and if cohabitation has not been resumed after 2 years of judicial separation. Then a wife can also apply for divorce if her husband already had a wife before the marriage, or if he is guilty of rape and bestiality. And then the 1986 amendment permits divorce on the ground of mutual consent. So the petition for dissolution of marriage should be submitted to the court after a year of marriage. But earlier, the time period was 3 years after marriage, and it was reduced to 1 year. And then the divorces cannot remarry till 1 year has elapsed since the divorce. Here, the Act also provides for the maintenance allowances during the judicial separation, and it is not just for wife, but even the husband can also demand or claim the maintenance allowances. So that is about marriage among Hindus. Marriage is an institution which is formed both in primitive and modern societies. It is an institution which helped man sustain the continuity of his race in a socially accepted manner. In Muslim community, marriage is a social contract and it is for the continuity of human race with important objectives as controlling of the sexual activity, reproduction, and continuity of the generation. Now, broadly speaking, Muslims are divided into Shias and Sunnis, and the two groups follow different norms and social practices in certain areas. They are also divided into Ashrafs, Ajlafs, and Sayyids. Now, according to D.F. Mullah, marriage is a contract for the purpose of legalizing sexual intercourse and for the procreation of children. Now, coming to Arab traditions, that is, before the birth of Islam, there were several traditions in Arab, like buying of girl from parents by paying a sum of money, temporary form of marriage, marriage with two real sisters simultaneously, and there existed freedom of giving up and again accepting women. And also, in pre Islamic Arabia, customs regulated the sexual relations, and there flourished several types of sexual relations. Like, there existed a regular form known as marriage, and there existed group marriage, also marriages by barter, and also flag marriages or prostitution. And there was a practice which involved sending off wife to a famous person for intercourse. Now, all these unethical traditions of the Arab society was abolished by Islam, and it brought a drastic change in the concept of marriage. Prophet Muhammad forbade all these types of loose sexual unions, and he also forbade the temporary form of marriage. Muslims use the word nikah for marriage, which is an Arabic word denoting the union of sexes. It is a contract which legitimizes sexual intercourse and gives legitimate status to children born out of such union. It also regulates the individual's life and society. Now, legally, a Muslim marriage is considered a contract because the elements which constitute a marriage and the manner in which it is completed is almost similar to that of a civil contract. That is, the parties to marriage should be competent. The marriage is not complete without proposal, acceptance, and free consent of the parties or guardians. And just like the rules regulating the rights and duties of the parties are present, there are also provisions for respective rights and duties of husband and wife on divorce or dissolution of marriage. Nikah is also a social institution by which a definite and a dignified status is conferred upon the women. And according to Prophet, no social reform is possible without giving equal status to the women. So Nikah, as a social institution, gives the women a separate and dignified status in the society. That is, it limits the polygamy, and under Muslim law, a person is not allowed to marry more than four times. That is, he is not allowed to have more than four wives at a time. And the dower must be given or promised to be given by the husband to the wife as a mark of respect towards her. And the marital relations between close relatives are prohibited. And among the Shias, they are not allowed to marry during the religious journey, that is Hajj. The Quran, the holy book of the Muslim, directs every Muslim to marry a suitable woman of his choice. Then it is also a religious duty of every Muslim to contract a marriage according to the rules of Islam. So, according to Islam, it is believed that marriage is such an act of which, if a person does it, he gets religious benefits, and if he abstains from doing it, then it's equal to committing a sin. So, accordingly, the objectives of Muslim marriages are to provide legal validity to the sexual relationship of husband and wife, to provide legit status to the children, and further, marriage is not just a contract, but it is also a religious duty. And it is believed that if a person performs it with devotion and religious duty, he would be rewarded in the next world. So the essential elements of the Muslim marriage is proposal and acceptance. Here, the proposal is made by the groom to the bride in the presence of two witnesses and a Maulvi. And it is important that the proposal and acceptance are completed in the same meeting. And a proposal made at a meeting and its acceptance at another meeting does not constitute a regular marriage, but at the same time, it is treated as irregular marriage, that is, fasad. And then capacity, that is, the capacity to enter the marriage contract. The person should be mentally sound and should have attained puberty. Minors can enter into marriage only with the support of the guardians. And in a Muslim community, the puberty age for boys is 15 and 9 for girls. Then coming to the types of marriages. Valid marriage, also called as Sahih. So it is a marriage in which all the prescribed legal rules are followed. Here, both the parties entering into the marriage contract have all the rights, that is, the wife has the right to dower, maintenance, residence at her husband's place, and it also gives a legitimate status to the children born. And second type is void or invoid marriage, called as batil. So here, marriage is considered as void or invoid when the essential conditions required for marriage is not followed or fulfilled, and the offsprings born out of such marriages are considered to be illegitimate, that is, having the plurality of husbands, and marriage prohibited on the grounds of consanguinity, affinity, etc., constitute for void or batil type of marriage. And then irregular marriage, called as fasid. Now, this type of marriage is contractual under temporary prohibition, as some laws are not followed or fulfilled. And these are not considered as legal nor illegal, but the children born out of such marriages have inheritance right. So, factors like a marriage without witness, marriage for the fifth time, with the survival of all the wives, then marriage with a woman undergoing iddat, etc. Now, the above types are followed in the Sunni sect, and in Shia sect there is no irregular marriage. And then there is temporary marriage or muta marriage. So it is found in the Shia sect, and the literal meaning of the term muta is pleasure. So here the duration or period of time of marriage is fixed, and it may vary from 1 day to several years. Now, during this contract period, meher or reward or certain amount is paid to the woman for pleasure she gives to man. Here, the time of marriage is fixed before entering the marriage contract. And if the time, the dower are not fixed before the contract, then it could amount to a regular marriage. Now, this type of marriage was common in ancient Arabia for many centuries, and this marriage was prevalent both before Prophet and after his demise, though he had prohibited such type of marriage. So here, a man is permitted to get into contract with women of other religion, but a woman cannot get into contract with men of other religion. That is, women's contract is restricted to Muslim men and not to non-Muslim men's. That is, she has to get into contract only with the Muslim men. So this marriage was condemned in the Islamic law because the woman in question did not leave her home, and her children did not belong to their father, and they could not be affiliated to their father's clan. So the aspects of matrilineal and patrilineal clashed. And then legal prohibitions. So Muslim law accepts polygamous or polygamy by males. That is, a man can have four wives at a time, but the marriage with the fifth wife is not accepted. And Muslim women should have only one husband at a time and cannot go in for the second marriage unless the first husband is legally divorced. Further, if a Muslim woman violates and marries a second time without divorce, then the children born out of the wedlock is considered to be illegitimate. Then, marriage with blood relations are prohibited, and consanguineous marriages are strictly prohibited. Foster marriage, that is, marriage is prohibited between those belonging to foster relations. For instance, a woman suckled by the child other than child's real mother, then that woman becomes a foster mother or is recognized as a foster mother, and marital relations are prohibited. So, a Muslim marriage can be considered void on the grounds of religious differences. And a Muslim is not allowed to have two wives at a time among which consanguinity persists. That is, he is not allowed to marry the sisters or the sister of his wife during her lifetime. And then Muslim is not allowed to marry during the period of iddat. Now, iddat is a period of time after a marriage is dissolved, and the main purpose of this prohibition is to ascertain whether a woman is pregnant or not to avoid future problems of parentage. And then a Muslim cannot marry when he is on a pilgrimage or when a woman is pregnant. And then coming to the aspect of dower or meher. According to D.F. Mullah, meher is a sum of money or other property which the wife is entitled to receive from the husband in consideration of the marriage. So it is paid to the woman for the surrender of her person after the marriage contract. Thus, it marks a respect and it imposes certain restrictions regarding divorce. So, here there are three types of meher, like fixed meher. Here, the amount of meher payable to a woman is fixed before the contract, and then unfixed meher. Here, the amount of meher is not specified or not fixed at the time of contract, and deferred meher. Here, the amount of dower is neither specified nor unspecified. And then divorce. So, the contract of marriage can be dissolved either with or without the intervention of the court. And Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939 and the Shariat law permits the dissolution of marriage on several grounds. So, the Shariat law governs Muslim marriages in India. Coming to the husband's right of divorce. The husband can divorce the wife by triple talaq, and the pronouncement of talaq can be revocable or irrevocable. The irrevocable pronouncement dissolves the marriage immediately on its utterance, while the revocable pronouncements does not dissolve the marriage until the period of iddat has expired. Talaq may be given in following ways, like talaq-e-dashan, that is, a single pronouncement of talaq is made during tahar, that is, during menstruation period, without sexual relationship. And the Shia sect do not accept this form of talaq, and among the Sunnis, the pronouncements made during the state of intoxication is termed as void. And then second one, talaq-e-hasan. So here three pronouncements of talaq are made during three successive tahrs without having sexual intercourse. And then talaq-e-ul-bidat. Here it consists of two aspects, that is, making three pronouncements during a single tahar in one sentence or in three separate sentences, or making a single pronouncement in a tahar with clear intention to irrevocably dissolve the marriage. The Shariat Act of 1937 makes a mention of three other kinds of divorce, that is, illa, where the husband swears by God and abstains himself from sexual relation with his wife for a period of 4 months or more. It constitutes for divorce among the Sunnis in Hanafi school, but in Shafi'i school, it provides only a ground for divorce. Then, second, zihar. Here, the husband pronounces talaq with sound mind to his wife in the presence of two witnesses. And the pronouncement does not dissolve the marriage, but it only provides a ground for divorce. Then, lian. It is where a man accuses his wife of adultery. It provides ground to wife to approach court asking either her husband to withdraw his accusation or to swear 4 times by God that his accusations is true. And if husband does not withdraw the accusation but swears by God, wife has the option of admitting her guilt or swearing in the same mode that she is innocent. And then a wife's right of divorce. So the Dissolution of Muslim Marriage Act 1939 provides the divorce rights to women on grounds like when the whereabouts of the husband is not known for a period of 4 years, where the husband has neglected or has failed to provide for her maintenance for a period of 2 years, where the husband has been sentenced to imprisonment for a period of 7 years or upwards, where the husband has failed to perform without a reasonable cause his marital obligations for a period of 3 years, where the husband was impotent at the time of the marriage and continues to be so, where the husband was insane or has been insane for a period of 2 years, or is suffering from leprosy or other venereal diseases, where the woman, having been given in marriage by her father or the guardian before she had attained the age of 15 years and reputed the marriage before attaining the age of 18, where the husband treats her with cruelty, like habitual assaults, attempting or forcing the wife to lead an immoral life, etc. Now, the legal effects of divorce in all cases are that wife is the wife is supposed to observe a death of divorce, and a husband is obliged to provide for the maintenance of his wife during the iddat period. And further, wife is not permitted to contract another marriage before the completion of the iddat, and she also becomes entitled to the deferred dower. So that is about marriage among Muslims. So marriage is a union of a male and female for procreation, and according to Lowy, it is a relatively permanent bond between permissible mates. So the marriages among Christians are considered a sacrament and have important or essential functions. They are procreation and healthy development of individuals, followed by the regulation of sexual desires, as they believe that it is sanctioned and regulated by God, and then to establish a family and to undertake the responsibility of the children born out of the union of male and female, and to give an identity to the newborn. And hence, according to Christianity, the institution of marriage is one way to regulate and control sex and to ensure healthy procreation and promote mutual love among men and women, and most importantly, the perpetuation of human race. So, in the pre Christian Roman law, marriage and divorce were private acts. The Romans had the freedom of dissolving their marriages like the way they had of entering them. No formalities were required for either of the act. But the advent of Christianity gave a new form to marriage. With the institution of marriage being regarded as a sacrament, and the marital union being considered as indissoluble. So many Roman Catholic countries follow the canon law in determining the matrimonial relations. And according to the canon law, by marriage, man and wife are made one flesh by the act of God, as marriage is a holy tie and a sacrament. And further, it was Saint Paul who had proclaimed that marriage was a sacramental and indissoluble union. So, the belief in Christianity is that the first institution created by God is marriage. Accordingly, God made the first man, that is Adam, and God felt that it was not good to leave Adam alone, and so he created various animals and sent them to Adam. And Adam named all these, but yet he did not find a suitable companion for him. And God realized that Adam was incomplete man, and so he finally created a woman, that is Eve, for Adam. He blessed their union and gave them the earth to rule over. So it has to be noted here that the creation of marriage occurred prior to sin's entrance into the world. So it is believed to be a part of God's perfect design for mankind. And further, God emphasized three principles through his prophets, that is, marriage is sacred, God hates divorce, and marriage is designed to produce children of good character. Now, if we go back to the story of Adam and Eve, they had no parents, and Adam was created from the dust of the ground, and Eve from the flesh and bone. And thus, they began as one flesh through the creation of Eve. And the first marriage on earth began with only one relationship, a man and his wife. And according to Moses, the husband wife relationship is the primary, and the parent child relationship that followed is secondary. Now, the biblical definition of marriage states that a man leaves his father and mother and cleaves to his wife, and they become one flesh. Now, the Christians are divided into Protestants and Catholics. The latter are further divided as Latin Catholics and Syrian Catholics, and each group and subgroup are an endogamous group. And further, Catholics do not usually marry with Protestants, and Latin Catholics do not marry with Syrian Catholics. So the law relating to solemnization of marriages of Christians came into force in India with Statute 14 and 15, Victoria Chapter 40. It was supplemented by Act 7 of 1852 and Act 25 of 1864, and the latter was repealed by the Indian Marriage Act 1865, and then Christian Marriage Act 1872 was passed, repealing the laws till then in force. So coming to the elements of Christian marriage, now the Christian marriages are solemnized in churches by the priest. As a general rule in Christianity, marriage is born out of the free choice of the man and woman. Now, in general, the selection of marriage partners are made in three ways. That is, by the parents, by boys and girls themselves, or by parents and children together. So, after the selection of partner, the betrothal ceremony, that is, formal engagement, follows, and this ceremony takes place at the bride's house, where exchange of rings takes place. And once the engagement is completed, the formalities to be fulfilled follows. That is, producing a certificate of church membership, a certificate of character, and submitting an application for marriage in the church 3 weeks before the due date. Now, after the submission of the marriage application, the church priest invites the objections against the marriage, if there are any, and the marriage day will be fixed if no objections are received during the specified period. Then the marriage takes place on the fixed day at the church of which the girl happens to be the member. And the ceremony is officiated by the priest, who asks the groom and the bride if they accept each other as wife and husband. And once they give their consent, he solemnizes the marriage. The Christians generally practice monogamy, and polygamous marriages are strictly prohibited in Christianity. So, coming to the aspect of divorce, the Indian Christian Marriage Act 1872, amended in 1928, regulates various aspects of Christian marriage, and it also strictly prohibits the practice of polygamy, that is, polygyny and polyandry, and it supports and promotes monogamy. So the law regarding divorce, judicial separation, are contained in the Indian Divorce Act 1869. So under Section 18 of the Act, Either spouse can seek divorce on the grounds contained in the section 19. They are where the party was important at the time of marriage, where the parties are within the prohibited degree of consanguinity or affinity, where the either party was a lunatic or idiot at the time of marriage, where the former husband or wife of either party was living at the time of marriage with the said marriage in force, and if consent was obtained by force or fraud. And under section 10, the wife can seek for the dissolution of the marriage on the following grounds: where the husband has ceased to be a Christian by conversion to another religion, where incestuous adultery has been committed, in case of bigamy with adultery, marriage with another woman with adultery, instances of rape, sodomy, or bestiality, instances of adultery coupled with cruelty, or adultery coupled with desertion without reasonable cause for 2 years or more. So, the one highlight of Christianity is that remarriages are permitted and both widows and widowers are encouraged to marry again. So, that is about marriage among Christians. Family. It is the simplest and most elementary group found in any society. It is a social group consisting of father, mother, and children, and it is also an intimate domestic group made up of people related to one another by bonds of blood, sexual mating, or legal ties. So, according to Ramanuja, as a reproductive or biological unit, a family is composed of a man and a woman having a socially approved sexual relationship and whatever offspring they might have. As a social unit, family is defined as a group of persons of both sexes related by marriage, blood, or adoption, performing roles based on age, sex, and relationship, and socially distinguished as making up a single household or a sub-household. And a simple definition of family, according to Nimkov, family is a more or less durable association of husband and wife with or without children, or of a man or woman alone with children. So basically, a family includes parents, children, grandparents, grandchildren, etc. So, family among Hindus. Now, among Hindu society, the structure of the family, one can find the patriarchal and matriarchal family or joint family system. So, the Hindu joint family, it is the base of values, attitudes, and Hindu traditions. And according to Dr. Airavati Karve, joint family is a group of people who generally live under one roof, who eat food cooked at one hearth, who hold property in common, who participate in common family worship, and who are related to each other as some particular type of kindred. So basically, a joint family has depth of generation, that is, more than one or two generations of people live together and it has a common roof and a kitchen. That is, generally, all the members of family reside together under the same roof and also cook food in the common kitchen. And the instances of separate kitchen for the members within the family indicates the breakdown of the joint family. It has common worship, that is, every family has its own family god or goddesses, which is called as Kuladeva or Devi, and every family have their own religious traditions, customs, etc. It also has common property, that is, the Karta, the elder male member or the head of the family, manages the family property, and basically the property was not divisible, and Karta had all the rights to take any decisions with regard to the property, and usually his decisions were final. It has Karta's authority. So the authority was determined on the basis of seniority. The joint family was an authoritarian structure, and the Karta enjoyed an unquestioned authority, and his decisions were final, and the individuals had less freedom in any decisions, sorry, had less freedom in any decision making processes, and Karta decided on all matters of the family affairs, property, education, occupation, marriage, etc. So it also had system of pre-arranged marriages, that is, the marriages were arranged by the parents or the elders of the family, and the individual had little space or no space at all for opinion with regard to the selection of partners. It also had high rate of procreation. Procreation was regarded as a religious duty, and moreover, the family required a large number of people to work on the agricultural fields. And further, the preference for male children were high, as only a male child could fulfill the ancestral obligations. And because of this, the procreation rate was basically high in the joint family structure. There was mutual rights and obligations, that is, every family member had to contribute and work for the welfare of the entire family, and the individual interests were given less importance. And further, every earning member in the family had to pool their earnings to the common family fund, and they had to help each other at all times. Further, it was a self-sufficient unit. That is, the joint family used to cater to the economic, recreational, educational, health, and all other needs of the family members. So it was both a production and a consumption unit. So here, there are two types of joint families or families. They are patriarchal joint family associated with the Nambudiri Brahmins of Kerala called as Illam, and matriarchal joint families associated with the Nair community called as Tharawad. So coming to patriarchal family, they are also called as father-centered or father-dominated family. The father or the elder male member is the head of the family and also the authoritative person who makes or takes decision pertaining to every aspect of the family members, and usually his decisions are final. Here the descent, inheritance and successions are traced through the male line, and hence they are patrilineal in nature, and it is basically the male children who who inherit the family properties or who have the inheritance rights. Now, as the wife changes her residence post marriage and stays with the husband's residence, it assumes the status of patrilocal residence, and women have a secondary status or position in the family. And then matriarchal family. It is also called as mother-centered or mother-dominated family. Here, mother or the elder women of the family enjoys excessive authority. So here the descent, inheritance and successions are traced through the mother's line or female line, and hence it is matrilineal in descent, and the properties are inherited by the daughters. It is also matrilocal in residence, that is, the woman stays back at her own residence after marriage, and the husband visits her house, and he is treated as a privileged visitor, and he has a secondary status in the family. So, speaking about authority, mother is the head, and she makes or takes the decision, and at the same time, her brother manages the property and the family affairs. And finally, there are nuclear families, that is, consisting of husband, wife, with or without children. So, the deterioration of joint family due to the impact of education, migration, industrialization, and urbanization, etc., have led to an increased scenarios of nuclear families coming up. Now, though they live separately, that is, husband and wife with children live separately, they continue to maintain their relations or bonds with the family members, that is, their kins, and they interact very frequently. So, coming to family among Muslims, now the regulation and functioning of the family in Muslim is based on the Islamic law or Shariat law. And the Quran also lays certain rules and regulations regarding the functions of or functioning of the Muslim family. So the family structure is usually that of extended families, and it is divided into three degrees. So the first degree of family consists of father, mother, grandfather, grandmother, and their direct descendants, that is, sons, daughters, grandchildren, etc. And the second degree of family consists of relationship through the marriage, that is, mother in law, father in law, grandfather in law, grandmother in law, son's wife, daughter's husband, stepmother, stepfather, etc. And the third degree consists of relationship through foster nursing, which may be by father or mother's sister. And then family among Christians. So most part of India, patrilineal and patriarchal family structures are found. And if the structure is patrilineal in descent, the the inheritance passes through the male line, and that is usually from the father to the son or male descendants. And matrilineal family structure has found or seen in Kerala, and they also have matrilineal lineage where the female members inherit the property or family properties. And generally, the Indian Christian families are nuclear and small in size, and usually both, that is, husband and wife, are employed. So, that is about the family among Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. Man usually prefers to live in a society with mutual social interaction, and hence Man is a social animal, and from his birth to death comes in contact with many people, and in this he or she is connected to these people as relatives, colleagues, siblings, son or daughter, friends, etc. And in a specific way, few people become part and parcel of an individual life, and these relations are by blood and marriage, and hence the bond of blood or marriage which binds people together is called kinship. So kinship system represents one of the basic social institution, and kinship is universal, and it helps in the process of socialization and in maintenance of group solidarity. So according to Robin Fox, kinship is simply the relation between kin, that is, persons related by real relative or fictive consanguinity. In simple words, kinship is the bond of blood or marriage which binds people together. So, why kinship? Kinship determines various aspects like determination of family and marriages. That is, kinship determines who can marry whom, or which type of marriage is prohibited and recognized. In simple words, internal marriage, external marriage, parallel cousin and cross cousin marriages are all decided on the basis of kinship. Further, it helps in the determination of descent, inheritance, and succession rights. That is, it determines the genealogy, and further, it determines social responsibilities. And relatives are helped and supported, and vice versa, without any expectations. So it maintains or strengthens the bond between members. So, some of the common terms that are used in kinship, like the clan. So, a clan is a group of people claiming a unilineal descent from the same or single ancestor, but at the same time, they are not in a position to specify all the actual connections or links to their ancestor, and the ancestor is also genetically remote, that he or she is often considered as a mythical being, or they could also be animals and plants, etc. And clans usually consist of unilineage group, that is, who trace their origin to the single line of ancestry. And second term, lineage. So it is through which a descent is traced, and it is done by either following the father's line or through the mother's line or from both the lines. And third term, that is kindred. So it is a family group bound by their kinship ties to one person, that is, one individual is, sorry, an individual's kindred consists of all the people who are related to him or her through consanguinity and affinal ties. That includes biological relatives, spouses, in laws, etc. And the fourth term is descent. So it is the link between ancestors and the descendants, like the bond between parents and grandparents, children and parent, etc. And the fifth term, affinity. So it is a kinship link, that which is created through marriage. that is, bond between the husband and wife and his or her family, basically termed as in laws. So these relations that are born out of marriage are affinity. And the sixth term, consanguinity. So it is a biological descent kin, that is, children and parents, aunt and uncle, siblings, etc. They are all close kins or primary kins. And the seventh term, incest. So they are cultural norms that which prohibits sexual relations between blood relatives or close kins. That is to say, sexual relations are prohibited between brother and sister, son and mother, father and daughter, etc. And then you also have cross cousin. So they are father's sister's children or mother's brother's children. And the gender is not relevant in relating the cross cousins. That is, the gender of the children are not necessary to determine the cross cousins. And then there are parallel cousins. They are father's brother's children or mother's sister's children. And even here, the gender of the children are not relevant in determining the parallel cousins. So then coming to the types of kinship. As said before, the kins are linked either by bond of blood or by marriage. And on the basis of this, the relatives are classified into two. They are affinal and consanguineous. So affinal kinship, the bond of marriage is called as affinal kinship, and in which when a person gets married, he or she establishes relation not only with the person whom he or she marries, but also with the family members of their partners. So the wife is not just wife, she's also daughter-in-law, sister-in-law, etc. In the same way, husband is also son-in-law, brother-in-law, etc. So the marriage creates a lot of affinal kins. And then consanguineous kinship. The relation through the bond of blood is called consanguineous kinship. The bond between parents and children, between siblings, parallel cousins, cross cousins, grandchildren, etc., are all related as consanguineous kins. And further, an adopted child, if treated as their own child, that he or she is also considered as a consanguineal kin on the basis of social recognition. And then the degree of kinship, that is on the basis of nearness and the distance, the kins can be classified in three categories. They are primary kins. Now, they are very close and direct in relation, that is, father, son, mother, brother, sister, husband, wife, etc. They are all primary kins, direct relations. And then secondary kins. They are the primary kin of the primary kin. That is, they are related through the primary kin, and they are not our primary kin, but they are the primary kin of our primary kin, and thus they become our secondary kin. Now, for example, father's father, mother's father, father's brother, father's sister, mother's brother, mother's sister, etc. They are all our secondary kins. Likewise, even sister's husband, brother's wife, they are also secondary kin. Now, to simplify, My father is my primary kin. His brother, that is, my father's brother, is the primary kin of my father, and hence my father's brother is connected or related to me through my father, and hence he becomes my secondary kin. Likewise, my brother is my primary kin, and his wife will be my secondary kin, as his wife is related to me through my brother. And then tertiary kins. Now they are secondary kin of our primary kin and primary kin of our secondary kin. Now, for example, the sister-in-law of my sister is my tertiary kin. Here, my sister is my primary kin, and her sister-in-law is her secondary kin, and hence I am connected to my sister's sister-in-law through my sister. Hence, she becomes, that is, my sister's sister-in-law becomes my tertiary kin. So there are three types of kin on the basis of degree of kinship. And then the rule of descent. So it refers to a set of principles by which an individual traces the descent. So there are basically three rules, that is patrilineal descent. Here the descent is traced through the father's or male line, and the inheritance also takes place in the male line. And the kins are called as patrilineal kins. And then matrilineal descent. Here the descent is traced through the mother's line or the female line, and the inheritance takes place through the female line. And the descendants are also called as matrilineal kins. And then bilateral descent. So here the descent is traced through both the lines, that is female as well as male line, and the inheritance takes place in the both the lines. So this rule of descent helps in establishing a social position, that is, it gives a social position to an individual and also determines his rights and obligations. Further, it also determines the rights of inheritance. And then coming to kinship usages. So the study of kinship also includes the study of behavior patterns of different kins. It could be said that every relationship involves a particular type of behavior. That is, the behavior of the children towards parent is that of respect, love, while the behavior of parents towards children is love, affection, care, etc. Likely, the behavior of husband to his wife is of love, and vice versa. And also, the behavior of brother towards his sister is of affection, care, and vice versa. So, the usages are called as kinship usages, and some of the regular usages that has been seen in traditional societies are avoidance. So in all societies, the usage of avoidance is observed in one form or the other. So this usage means that a kin should remain away from or maintain a distance from each other. It is not just about avoiding the sexual relationship, but also avoiding face to face contact. Now, traditional northern societies, you can find rigid practice of this usage, where daughter-in-law avoided direct face-to-face contact with father-in-law, and where she used to cover her face through or with the parda or the veil. And this was basically to enforce the incest taboos. And then, second, joking relationships. So it is the reverse of the avoidance usage. And here, the kins are permitted to tease or to make fun of each other. And it involves friendliness and sometimes antagonism between individuals in certain social situations. For example, joking relations can be seen between Devar Babi, Jija Sali, etc. And then third one, technonymy. So it is a Greek word and used in anthropology by E.B. Taylor in the year 1889. So here, a kin is not referred to directly by the name, but is referred through another kin. That is, a kin becomes a medium of reference between two kin. So in traditional societies, especially in northern societies or sometimes in southern societies also, a wife never uttered the name of her husband, but she used to refer to him through their children. For example, father of Ramu, and also usage like father of Ramu asked me to hand it over to you, etc. So such usages prevailed in societies, though it is still practiced, but it is not rigidly seen. And then fourth one, avunculate. So it is a usage in the matriarchal family system where the maternal uncle gets a prominent place in the life of his nieces and nephews, and his obligations to them exceed beyond that of their father. And fifth one, imitate. So it's common in patriarchal system wherein a special importance is given to the father's sister. And here the father's sister gets more respect than their mother. And sixth one, covet. So it's a usage or it's a practice common among many primitive tribes. Here, the husband is made to lead the life of an invalid along with his wife whenever she gives birth to a child. That is, the husband restrains from the active work and observes the same taboos observed by his wife, and it signifies the strong marital bond between the husband and wife. Now, these usages had been very common in the traditional societies of India, but with the passage of time, impact of modern education, industrialization, urbanization, migration, etc., these usages have changed a lot, and some of the usages have become very rare. So these are few kinship symbols which are commonly used to represent the individuals and various relations in sociological way. So a triangle indicates the male, a circle indicates a female. Now a triangle, when it is darkened or striped, it indicates deceased male. A circle, when darkened or striped, it indicates deceased female. and a equal sign indicates married, and equal sign when striped indicates divorced. A vertical line indicates descent. A bracket facing downwards indicate sibling relations. A square indicates undetermined gender. Bracket facing towards the right indicates sibling relations. Bracket facing towards the left indicates marital relations. A horizontal line indicates relations. A triangle with a dot in between indicates adopted relation. And two curves indicate cohabiting relations. So these symbols are used in kinship diagrams to represent different relations. Now, coming to the concept of kinship organization in India and regional variations, here we'll be focusing on how kinship usages vary from regions to region within the country. And Kinship Organization in India is a book authored by Dr. Airavati Karve, where she makes a study of kinship usages, kinship patterns in different zones of the country. So the zones are divided as the northern zone, the southern zone, the eastern zone, and the central zone. And these divisions are on the basis of the languages used or spoken, like Sanskrit, Indo-Aryan languages, Dravidian languages, Austric languages, or Mundari language. So here, basically in the northern zone and the central zone, we can find Sanskrit and Indo-Aryan languages, whereas in the southern zone, we can find Dravidian language, and in the eastern zone, we can find Austeric or Mundari languages. So the North Zone consists of the states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, West Bengal, Assam, Punjab, Haryana, Kashmir, Meghalaya. Central Zone consists of states of Rajasthan, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, and Orissa. Southern Zone consists of Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. Eastern Zone consists of Nagaland, Mizoram, parts of Bihar, Assam, and Orissa. So here we'll be focusing on the aspects of marriage reference status. So starting with the northern zone or the north zone, the basic aspect you can notice here is that the kins younger to the person in reference are directly addressed by their names, whereas elder ones are addressed using their kinship terms. For example, if a son is calling his father, he calls him Pitaji, and if a father is calling his son, he calls him by his name. And children of the both the generations, that is ascending as well as descending generations, are referred to as one's own sibling group. That is, there is no separation of brothers' children, sisters' children, etc. They are all considered as one unit. And here, all the generation members are equally respected. That is, great grandfather, grandfather, etc., receive same kind of respect that which is shown or given to the father. And behaviors, duties, responsibilities of each are strictly regulated and controlled by the family norms. And you can also see a replacement of traditional Sanskrit terms with the suffix G, like Pitamaha becomes Pitaji, etc. And then, with regard to the marriage regulations, so it is that is marital bonds are based on consanguinity, that is regulations are based on consanguinity. So a person must not marry in his patri family or patri clan, and a person should avoid marriage with the children of his mother's siblings and cousin, and also with the children of father's sister and the children of father's female cousins. So these rules are elaborate in different regions. And further, the wedding ceremony has something called as nyota. Now, in nyota, that is nyota, the money is given in cash and received in a big metal dish, and a village dignitary keeps careful records of cash given by each guest. The family which receives cash gift must return them to their respective families when a similar occasion arises. So this gift is called as nyota, and the nyota registrations are maintained for generations together, so the family can give it back when the occasions arises. And further, if the girls and boys were married when they were children or at a younger age, the bride is not sent to the groom's home until she reaches puberty, but she goes to her in-laws' home for a few days as a guest, and later on an auspicious day, that is, after the bride has had her first period, she is taken to the groom's home. And for the purpose of marriage, a village is an exogamous division of society, which means that all the people belonging to one caste living in a village behave as if they were descendants of one common ancestor. And all the members of the family observe the aspect of pollution at birth and death in the family. And here, naming of the child is concerned. A child can be named after the grandfather only if he has died before the birth of the child. And with regard to remarriage or second marriage, the second marriages does not usually require ceremonies or rituals and vows also. So here, especially after marriage, the woman's freedom is capped, and she is not supposed to be free with her in-laws. But these restrictions are relaxed as she becomes a mother, and several of the restrictions are given away, and she assumes the status of mother-in-law, that which her mother-in-law is enjoying. And a woman must stand up and cover her head and face if she is in the same room as her parents in law, that is, father in law and mother in law, there. And the brothers and the cousins of the parent in law, when she is interacting with them, also, she is supposed to cover her face. And except on ceremonial occasions, the daughter in law should must never be in the same room as her father-in-law is, or other elder brothers or cousins of her husbands are present. So she should avoid being in the same room of these people. And towards the younger brother of her husband, her behavior is more free, and she may joke with him. And only when the mother-in-law is old or dead, a woman has freedom of speech and behavior. So if the husband dies when the bride is young, she is branded as inaus- inauspicious woman, and she is considered to be a bad omen. And further, a father, that is, a bride's father, does not eat in the house where his daughter is given in marriage, and sometimes even the village in which the daughter's husband's people live are also avoided for meals. And here, all generations, usually three or more generations, live together. And in case if they are living separately, they make sure that the needs of the members are fulfilled and catered to. So there is a strong bond between the members of the family. And then the words for father's father is Dada, father's grandfather is Pardada, mother's grandfather is Parnana, father's mother is Dadi, mother's mother is Nani, father's uh, and mother's father is Pardadi, mother's father's mother is Parnani, and father's elder brother is Tau, father's younger brother is termed as Kaka, father's sister is termed as Bua, mother's sister is Masi or Mausi likewise. So these are few of the kinship usages or kinship terms that which are used to denote relations. So moving on to the South Zone. Now this South Zone has both types of systems, that is patrilocal and matrilocal systems, or patrilineal and matrilineal family systems. But it is not universal to the whole of South India. Now patriarchy, Nambudiri Brahmins, also called as Illam, and matriarchy Nayars, also called as Tarwad. So in the matriarchy system, the kinship by blood relations are given more importance, and not much importance are associated to the relations by marriage. Now, this is basically because wife usually stays at her residence even after marriage, and husband pays visit to the wife's house. So the relations are basically from the female line or mother's line, that is sister, mother's brother, etc. So coming to the aspect of independence of women, now there is a lot of freedom, a lot of independence practiced by women. There is no strict regulations. And then unmarried sons belong to mother's tarwad, and married ones belong to the wife's tarwad. And Karnavan, that is usually mother's brother or the eldest male member of the family, manages or looks after the family properties. So until 1912, Tarwad property could not be divided, and relation between husband and wife was more formal, and Carnarvon enjoyed an unquestioned authority. But the Travancore Act 1912, Cochin Act 1920, and Kerala Act 1958 all brought about changes to this structure, and property now can be divided. And whereas in the patriarchal structure or patrilineal families, the wife changes her residence after marriage and moves to husband's residence, and there is both, that is the kinship relations, blood relations and marriage relations are given importance, and clan rule, that is exogamous clan unit, that is clan units practice exogamous rule, that is marrying outside one's own clan, and marrying within one's own clan is not accepted and it is prohibited. So one has to marry outside one's own clan, and marriage between maternal parallel cousin is also prohibited, and surrogate marriage is accepted, that is marrying wife's sister or two brothers or sisters marrying from the same family is also accepted, and preferential marriage is practiced where first preference is given to elder sister's daughter and followed by father's sister's daughter likewise. So cross cousin marriages are also practiced and accepted, Now, taboos with regard to marriage: close blood relatives cannot marry, that is, primary kins, secondary kins cannot intermarry, and levirate marriage is a taboo, and also one cannot marry mother's sister's daughter, that is, parallel cousin marriages are not practiced and they are prohibited. So, in marriage, age is given primary importance, and further, the girl has freedom in her in law's house, unlike the North. So, here, the terms usages like achan for father, appa for father, ajja, ajji, now periyamma in Tamil usage, anna for brothers, akka for sisters, like chechi for sister. These usages are common in the southern zone. So if we look at the south zone and the north zone, we can find certain differences. Now, basically, they are, that is, in the north, the members of the orientation family of orientation cannot become the member of family to where the bride is given. That is, the intimate bond is restricted to the couples, and the family members do not share such bond. Whereas in South, both the families share a strong bond. There is no restrictions. And in the North, one can clearly identify the relations on the basis of the kinship terms that are used to refer to one another, like the usage like mama, mami for mother's brother and his wife used in North, whereas it is a common usage in South for both the parties. So in South, the kinship is based on age differences, while in North, it is about generational differences. And in South, there are no restrictions to the married girl, and she frequently visits her house without restriction. But whereas in North, there is several restrictions imposed upon the daughter-in-law, and she is not freely allowed to go back to her parent home. So these are few of the differences. And then coming to central zone. So here in central zone, there are large groups of people speaking languages of the Dravidian family. So it's a mixture of the northern zone as well as the south zone traditions in some of the states. And most of these regions contain primitive tribes at all stages of assimilation to the predominant agricultural economy of the zone. And the marriage of a man to his mother's brother's daughter, also marriage of a girl to her father's sister's son is practiced, and castes are subdivided into exogamous clans, and further these exogamous clans are arranged in a hypergamous hierarchy, that is, a girl in a lower clan can marry a man of a higher clan, but a girl in a higher clan cannot marry a man in a lower clan. And these features vary from state to state and from regions to region, depending upon the practices of the people. And there are main lines and subsidiary lines of descent among the Rajput clans. That is, the the descendants of the sun considered as Rama, the the descendants of the moon considered as Krishna, and the descendants of the sage from fire the serpents, etc. So each line is divided into numerous class and sub. Sorry, each line is divided into numerous clans and subclans, and the major clans can marry among one another, but the subclan of one major clan do not intermarry, and all the clans have gotras, and the names of rishis are attached to these gotras. So cross cousin marriages are not a mandatory rule, and the custom of levirate marriage is seen among the lower caste groups. And further, a man is allowed to marry his wife's younger sister. So the terms here for in-laws are Vevahi and Vevan, and Aja for grandfather, Veer for brother, and in Gujarat you can see northern practices, and also that is practice of North Zone, and also cross cousin marriages are practiced. And when we speak about Maharashtra, it has a mix up of the Dravidian culture and styles, as it live closer to the north and the southern zone. And some have the custom of levirate marriage, while some practice cross cousin marriage. Now, the rule of exogamy is not dependent on the clan name, but it is dependent on the symbol connected with the clan. And this symbol is called as Devka, that could be living or non-living. And each family worships its Devaka at the time of marriage, and two people having the same Devaka cannot marry. So the exogamy's rule is associated with the clan object or clan symbol and not with the clan name. And parallel maternal cousins and parallel paternal cousins cannot marry, and preference is given for man's marriage to his maternal cross cousins. So here, Nipanja is used to refer to great great grandfather, Panja for great grandfather, Aja for grandfather, Bapa for father, Put for son, Natu for grandson, etc. So there are various kinship usages like it goes. And then coming to the eastern zone. So in eastern zone, there are Mundari language speaking population, and they practice patrilocal and patrilineal aspects of family. So the rule of cross cousin marriage is that a man cannot marry his mother's brother's daughter as long as the mother's brother is alive, nor can marry the father's sister's daughter as long as father's sister is alive. And they engage in premarital sexual relationships, and sometimes these relationships result in marriage, but otherwise the marriage mates are different. And rule of exogamous clan, that is, a person must marry outside the clan and also outside the circle of near relations like first cousins, etc. And after marriage, they usually set up their own house, and they rarely live with their parents. And if the mother is widowed or there are younger siblings, then they are taken care of. And hence, there are no instances of joint family system. Now, the single family is connected with other families by common ancestor worship, residence in the same village, and there is always mutual help when needed. But the man and wife have an independent life of their own and authority over their children. That is, they have an independent life. At the same time, they have their authority over the children. So, married women are addressed in dual because the married life for a woman is the life of two people and not that of a bride lost in the huge joint family of her husband. So, coming to Kasi of Assam, speaking Astro-Asiatic language, they are a group of matrilocal people, matriarchal families, and the husband lives for a time with the wife's family, but after the birth of a child or two, the married pair go to live in a separate house erected by the man. And this house and the land belongs to the man if he has acquired them by his own labor. And he can also give them away to whomever he wishes. But on his death, that is, if he dies without making a gift of the land or property while he was living, all his property passes to his mother, and the widow may get a half share if she doesn't marry again. And further, if he has no mother, then it goes to his youngest sister. And if there are no female relatives on the mother's side, then it goes to his youngest daughter. So that is because no ancestral property is owned by man, and hence it is passed off to the girls or in the female line. And here, the women enjoys a great amount of freedom. They always get the custody of children in case of divorce. And further, husband and wife both work to support the family. And a person must marry outside his clan, and marriages of parallel cousins are not allowed or not permitted, and cross cousin marriages are there but very rare. So the terms like Abba, Baba, etc. are used for father, Ajja, Tata is used for grandfather, and Nana is sorry, and for mother the term Nana is used, and father's brother is termed Ka or Kaka, and mother's brother is termed as Mama, etc. So these are about certain kinship variations or regional variations that you can see within different zones of the country. And if we dig deeper to the a book of kinship organizations, we can find various other terms given by Airavati Karve in reference to different people, different relations, etc. So these institutions of family and marriage have undergone a series of change throughout time, and it is still continuing to change in one way or the other. So these changes were basically a direct result of improved education or Western education, awareness among women, industrialization and urbanization, migration, constitutional laws, etc. And along with these changes, there are several challenges to the institution of family and marriage because there are many advancement, technological developments, there are other issues happening in the country or in the societies, and these institutions have to cope up with these things. So here we'll be focusing on challenges due to the changes in the institutions of family and marriage. So, beginning with family. Now, the basic change here is the size of the family. Now, traditionally, the joint family system had more than two generations of people living under a single roof, sharing common ways of life. But with the aspects of industrialization, education, employment, migration, etc., slowly and gradually, the joint family began to deteriorate, and it led to the establishment of nuclear families with the husband and wife along with their children. So the number of members in the family gradually declined, and today we call it a nuclear family. So here what happens is the grandparents and relatives usually pay a visit to other members of the family during some ceremonies like birth, death, etc. Or in some other cases, they have a get together at their ancestral home. And then ownership and authority. So traditionally, Karta enjoyed an unquestioned authority, and in today's society, this unquestioned authority of Karta has lost its significance, and today individual choices are given more importance, and further, Karta has limited role in terms of decisions with regard to marriage, education, occupation, etc. And further, his hold on family property has also seen a change, especially with the passing of the Hindu Inheritance and Succession Act of 1956. Now, this also has given economic independence to the members of the family. So, coming to socialization functions. Now, traditionally, a joint family setup used to cater to the aspect of socializing the younger ones. That is, the elders in the family, grandparents, great grandparents, or other elders, used to socialize the younger ones with right values, family norms, good and bad behavior, and they also used to correct the wrong behaviors of the children or the younger ones, and hence there was effective socialization. But with the deterioration of the joint family structure and establishment of nuclear families, and in a situation where both the partners are working, it becomes difficult, or they find no time to socialize their kids in an effective manner, and these kids are just dumped into the uh, out external agencies like the play schools, daycare centers, etc. So the aspect of socialization has been taken over by an external agency, and the effectiveness of socialization also varies. So there are always a chance, or there are always higher chances where the kids could be uh, or the kids could develop negative tendencies or show deviant behaviors due to the faulty socialization that take place in these daycare centers or play schools, etc. Because most of the times the kids are not reasoned out about what they are supposed to do and what they are not supposed to do. So it becomes a problem in the overall growth of an kid. And then residence. So in today's time, the husband and wife establish their own residence after marriage, and in some case they live in separation, or in some cases they live as single parents looking after the children as well as performing economic activities for their survival. So weakening family norms. Now the aspects of sympathy, empathy are on the decline, and there is a lack of intimate bond between the parent and children, between siblings, between grandparents and grandchildren's, grandparents and parents, etc. And there is also lack of face-to-face interaction among primary kins, and all these have led to an increase in psychological issues among the youngsters, and moreover, the values of respect to the elders, respect to the family norms, respect to the various aspects of society, etc., are on the decline. And it could be basically due to the faulty socialization that happens when they are not socialized in an effective way by the elders of the family. And it could also be due to their exposure to the social media or the entertainment aspects at an early age, uh, after watching which they try to imitate or practice those stuffs in their real life. And they are addicted towards the western ways ideas at an early age, and this also leads to weakening of family ties, family bonds, etc. And further, the lack of attention of the parents upon the younger ones may lead to an increased scenario of the drug abuse or substance abuse or development of deviant tendencies amongst the younger ones. And then status of women. So if we compare the traditional society where women were accorded secondary status and where women were treated as a mere sexual object of procreation, and where women were denied access to education, occupation, etc. If we take up that to the modern society, the status of women has improved gradually. And today, women enjoy a better social position. She can get herself educated, and education has become a universal right. She can work, she can be independent, she can also live the life she desires to a certain extent. But despite all these progress that women have made in different sectors in the society, it could be still said that the attitude and the mentality of the patriarchal society still remains the same towards women, that is, putting women down, looking the women as weaker sections, etc. And these narrow-minded patriarchal mentality and attitude come as a blockade towards the progress of women, especially in Indian society. And then family relations. Now, here the distance between the daughter-in-laws and in-laws have changed considerably, and the traditional kinship usages have been disappearing slowly and gradually. And today, the daughter-in-law can interact with her father-in-law without covering her face, and the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law has become more of a daughter-mother kind. And also, daughter-in-laws are not treated as a servant, and her opinions are sought after for various aspects of the family. But despite all this, one can still find dowry-related harassments and dowry deaths taking place within the family. And on the other hand, traditionally, there was an intimate bond between the kins, primary kins, secondary kins, etc. But in today's societies, the interaction between the kins and intimate bonds have been on the decline, and individualism has crept in than the family welfare aspects. And then coming to balance between work and family. Now, this is an important aspect to maintain a healthy family relations, and also to regulate the behavior of the younger ones, and also to manage the activities of the family members and younger ones, and to regulate various aspects. But it could be noticed that with the deterioration of the joint family structure and increased nuclear family, the importance attached to the aspects of various self-sufficient aspects have been taken over by external agencies. That is to say, traditionally the joint family used to cater to various needs of the family members. it was a production as well as a consuming unit. But in today's society, the families have just become a consuming unit. And here, both the partners work, and in most of the cases, they work to support the family. And thus, they get less time to cater to the needs of the children, to provide them psychological support, to help them in their activities, to help them with their studies, etc. And at the same time, most of the parents today believe that buying costly gadgets, dumping these kids into elite schools, providing them internet facilities, tuition facilities, and fulfilling their wants are more than enough for the healthy development of the children. And here they fail to understand the importance of socialization, the need for love, care, affection, etc. to the child. And the lack of all these from the parents, that is lack of attentions of the parents towards the child's activities, and lack of care towards the child, etc., result in the development of deviant behaviors and development of other psychological traumas within the child. And if these are not sorted out, then it could always be a possibility that these goods can grow up and become a serious threat to the society. So here the parents are, sorry, here the parents are lost in accumulating wealth for the welfare of the family members, and they fail to maintain a balance between work and family. Thus, many of the family relations are dying or declining, and also the life of majority of the youngsters are taking a diversion because they find a lack of support, a lack of interest by the parents and their activities, etc. So, money doesn't make everything. The aspects of sympathy, empathy, love, care, affection, all these are much more valuable than money. So, just accumulating wealth and not catering to the needs of the children, emotional, psychological needs of the children, doesn't help in the overall progress of the kids. And then, a digital world. So, today's parents face a new problem of the digital world, and it becomes a hectic task to control the online activities or to monitor the online activities of their wards. And thus, due to lack of attention to the children, there are every possibility of children getting exposed to the darker side of the social media or internet at a young age, which could also increase their level of addiction. It could be gaming, it could be pornography, etc. And they may try to imitate those actions which they have seen in the real life. And when they try to imitate these actions in real life, it becomes a major threat to the society or to the other people in the society. Because in today's scenario, we can also find newses where minors are engaged in rapes, etc. And further, there are every possibility that overuse of internets and misuse of internets can also lead these youngsters who are not monitored into contacts with several unwanted groups or peer circles where they could get addicted or could get exposed to the use of drugs and other substance abuses. So, lack of parents' care, attention, and a lack of monitoring causes a lot of issues in the children, and these issues in the long run can become a societal issue. So, it is not just about the children, but it is also about the relationship between the partners or the marital relations. And marital bonds are dying today because of the digital world. because the physical and emotional intimacy between the married couples are declining, and the problems become social media status. And these couples, they hardly try to sort out the differences by reasoning out with the personal face-to-face interactions. And further, the stress, the rejection, etc., could also lead to people ending up their life with suicide. So here, if we take one report published in psychiatric, Indian Psychiatric Journal, this report says that 13% of the people involved in substance abuse are below the age of 20. And it also says that 63% of substance abusers seeking treatment revealed that they were introduced to drugs at a young age of 15 years and so. So this is a dangerous scenario, and that makes it, or that stresses on the importance of family interactions and family closeness or intimate bonds, so as to regulate, so as to control, so as to monitor the activities of the younger ones, and also to help them develop as responsible citizens of the country. And then coming to the aspect of marriage. So, firstly, age at marriage and rituals. Now, the legal age of marriage today is 21 for boys and 18 for girls. And this has brought a drastic change to the aspects of child marriage, pre-puberty marriages, cradle marriages, that which were common in traditional Indian societies. Now, that doesn't mean that child marriages have completely gone off Indian society. Still, we can find instances where child marriages are taking place in some states. And rituals. Now, traditionally, rituals were given importance. Some of the castes or some of the communities practiced week-long rituals with regard to the marriage. But today, those week-long practices are on the decline, and rituals are also altered, modified, and reduced. And moreover, with civil marriages, etc., rituals are not given that importance as it was in the traditional societies. And then widow remarriages. Now, traditionally in Indian society, the widows were not allowed to remarry, and their condition or their social status was very bad. But the passing of Widow Remarriage Act in the year 1856 legalized the widow remarriage in Indian society, and thus it gave a relief for the widows over the difficulties that were imposed upon them, and it also improved their status and gave a new ray of hope for survival. And then coming to intercaste, interreligion marriages or love marriages. So traditionally, intercaste marriages, interreligion marriages were not accepted and not permitted. And in traditional societies also, intercaste, especially a lower caste guy marrying an upper caste woman, was not accepted, and offsprings of such marriages did not have any status in the society. Whereas today, we can see a small amount of change taking place within the country, and as of 2014's report, 5% of intercaste marriages took place, and 2% of interreligious marriages took place in Indian society. So, what we have to notice here is, in terms of interreligious marriages, there are these anti-social groups, so-called the moral policers, who try to interfere in the personal life of individuals or personal life of the couples and try to ruin their marriage in the name of protection of religion, etc. So these moral policing group have to be controlled and have to be regulated. And moreover, they do not have any legal right to interfere in anyone else's personal life matters. So this is becoming a major issue in our country, the moral policies. And then mate selection. So traditionally, the individuals did not have a say or opinion with regard to the marriage or selection of the mates. And it was usually decided by the elders in the family. But in today's scenario, each individual have their own rights, own opinions, own choices with regard to the kind of partner they want, etc. And divorce and separation. Now, this is one of the complicated aspect of Indian society. Now, the official report of India says that 13 in 1,000 marriages end with divorce, whereas a dating app Truly Madly says that it saw a 200% increase in the number of profiles stating divorced, separated, or widowed. And it has to be noted here that there is a gross mismatch between the number of divorce and the number of dowry deaths taking place in the country. So the NCRB report of 1995 says that there were 4,668 dowry deaths in India, reported deaths. And in 2015, it was 7,634. And in 2017, it was 7,000. So dowry death in 2000 it was 19 per day. Sorry, in 2001 it was 19 per day, and in 2016 it has become or it has increased to 21 per day. So here the divorce rate is less, but on the other side, the aspects of dowry related deaths are high in the country. And further, we are in 2020, and Bangalore, called as or known as Silicon Valley of India, reported 17 cases of dowry abuse and dowry death within few days of January 2020. Now, this is according to the Indian Express report. So, going by this, India's divorce rate is less due to the social stigma attached to the divorced women in the society, and the fear of social tag has also led to the silent suffering of women, leading to her death. And it could also be said that she suffers in silence, bearing all the abuse and harassment, just for the sake of family's reputation in the society. So instead of getting divorced or instead of getting separated, majority of the women suffer in silence, and finally they either end their life or they are killed with the name of dowry. And the Dowry Prohibition Act is there, but still it is not highly valuable in the society, looking at the number of dowry cases, dowry death cases. And further, it could also be said that the digital world has also added to the misery of the married couples. That is, the couples spend more time in the social media sites, and the interaction or the face-to-face interaction is on the decline, and there is a lack of trust between the partners, especially with regard to the social media usages, etc. Now, all these also has led to the separation. And then coming to the aspect of single parent. So this is increasing in Indian society, and according to UN report, India has about 4.5% of single parent. That is roughly around 13 million single mothers are seen in Indian society. And then long-lasting marital bonds. So for a marital bond to be long-lasting, it requires a lot of effort, mutual love, mutual respect, mutual trust, mutual cooperation, and Marital bond is not about compromising or sacrificing something. It is about understanding, it is about cooperation, it is about accepting the differences, accepting the opinions, accepting the ideas, etc. So, if all these things are practiced, and more importantly, respecting the individuality, individual preferences or choices, etc. If these are all respected, then the marital bond can last long. But if there is even a small, minute aspect of mistrust, then that bond dies. And this is the reason because people are not intimately connected. They are not emotionally intimate. They are not bonding together, and this is one of the reasons why most of the relationships are dying prematurely in Indian society. For changes to take place, there has to be certain factors contributing to those changes. So here we'll be focusing on those factors, some of the factors which have contributed in bringing about a change in the institutions of family and marriage. So to start with, education. Now, education is one of the major aspects which brought about far-reaching changes, not just in the institution of the joint family, but also in the system of marriage. Now, traditionally, education was open only to men, but with the invasion of British and the Christian missionaries coming in, and the later constitutional provisions, etc., all permitted women education. So today we have about 65.46% of educated women in the country. And moreover, when women are educated, they always prefer to get employed, establish a life, improve their social status, economic status, etc. So they continue to work, they continue to migrate in search of jobs, etc., and they establish their life. And hence, today we can see women in different sectors across the world contributing immensely towards the progress of the country, as well as professional progress, etc. So, here, not just educated women, but also educated men wanted to free themselves from the clutches of the joint family structure, and hence they started migrating in search of jobs, in search of better opportunities, etc. And slowly, the joint family structure started to deteriorate because these educated individuals preferred to settle themselves in the urbanized or industrialized societies, and they also took with them their spouses, kids, etc. Thus, they established a family of their own consisting of their spouses and children, and slowly and gradually it deteriorated the joint family structure. On the other hand, traditionally, in the marriage institutions, it was elders who decided on the matters pertaining to partners, etc. But nowadays, the educated individuals share their opinion or put forth their views with regard to the traits and qualities of partner, their requirements in terms of the mates, etc. All these are now more of individual choices, and hence these brought about changes in the institution. And then authority. Now, traditionally, Karta enjoyed a higher authority, controlling various aspects of the family life, family matters, etc. But with education, what happens is individuals question the authoritative structures, etc. And they come out of that and they rebel sometimes. So, all these rigid practices have gradually been changing because of the aspects of individualism, etc. And moreover, and traditionally, men enjoyed higher authority and they controlled their wife, her life, etc. And she didn't have much opinion. But in today's society, both husband and wife have equal rights, equal an authority or equal control. So this inequality in terms of gender is also declining to some extent, and both the partners are mutually responsible for the actions which they taken. So here both have equal rights for every aspect of the family as well as their offsprings, etc. And then aspect of industrialization and urbanization. So industrialization resulted in migration of people, and with migration urbanization process started, and then various cities got better infrastructure facilities like healthcare system, education system, social justice system, etc. There were plenty of opportunities for the educated youths to grab in, and hence educated ones started migrating towards these regions, and they feel satisfied with the conditions around, with the opportunities around, and moreover, they want their children to make use of these highly developed infrastructural facilities, etc. And hence they settle in those industrialized areas. This, in turn, deteriorated the joint family structure, and especially in the 21st century, there are instances of further nuclear family deteriorating, like single parent has become a scenario, a trend, and live-in relationships are also gaining significance in the country, inspired from the Western ideas, etc. So all these have brought about changes, not just in the not just in the joint family structure, but the new developing aspects in terms of marital bonds are also bringing about far-reaching changes in the nuclear family structure also. And then Western values and ideas like individualism, free life, democracy, awareness among women. So all these brought about far-reaching changes within the institutions. So when we say rationalism, people were not ready to digest what is being said or imposed upon them as it is, and a sense of individualism prevailed, individual achievements, individual status, individual life, etc. And moreover, these Western ideas brought in a kind of thought processes among individuals where they wanted to enjoy their life freeing from the clutches of the traditional authoritative family. And today, the aspects of love marriages are also increasing. This is to do with the Western ideas, uh, self awareness, self consciousness, consciousness of desires, needs, etc. And then a few important aspects like legislative measures. Now, starting with the Child Marriage Restraint Act 1921. Now, according to this act, initially the age for boys was 18 and girls were 14, but the act was amended in 1978, and this amendment uh, changed the marriage age. That is, it brought the increased the marriage age, that is 21 for boys and 18 for girls. And anyone under the age entering into marital bond was considered as an offense. And then Hindu Marriage Act 1955, amended in 1986. So here, this act lays down the conditions for marriage, like neither party should have a spouse living at the time of marriage. Neither party should be a lunatic or an idiot, and that is, lunatics or idiots cannot enter into the marital relations. And then the legal age for boys is 21 and for girls 18. And further, this act lays down the grounds for judicial separation, like desertion for a continued period of 2 years, cruel treatment, leprosy, adultery, and it also lays down grounds for annulment of marriage, like if the spouse have been impotent at the time of marriage and continues to be so, or a party to the marriage was an idiot or lunatic at the time of marriage, and where consent of the petitioner was obtained by force or fraud, or where a wife was pregnant by some person other than the petitioner at the time of marriage. And further, it also lays down grounds for the dissolution of marriage, like on the basis of adultery, conversion of religion, unsound mind, leprosy, uh, desertion for 7 years, and if cohabitation is not resumed after 2 years from judicial separation, and if husband already had a wife before marriage or is guilty of rape and bestiality. And further, 1986 amendment permits divorce on the grounds of mutual consent. And then Special Marriage Act, this permits marriage irrespective of religion, etc. So it basically permits inter-caste, inter-religious marriages. And then Hindu Widow Remarriage Act. Now, traditionally, widows were not allowed to remarry, but this Widow Remarriage Act of 1856 legalized widow remarriages and gave them a new ray of hope and new life. And then Dowry Prohibition Act. Now, according to this act, giving or receiving dowry is an offense and punishable under the law, and it prohibits the act of dowry itself. But it could be said that considering the number of suicide rates in Indian country, uh, the Dowry Act has not been very impactful in the society, because today the practice of dowry continues to take place in different forms, in different ways. And then Hindu Succession Act. Now, this speaks about inheritance rights, who could inherit, and who could inherit a property when the will was not left by the person before death. So it speaks about inheritance rights, and both daughters as well as son are legally permitted for the inheritance rights. So these are few of the factors that which brought about changes within the institutions of family and marriage. So coming to the conclusions of it, so these institutions, that is marriage and family, they are the basic institutions for the continuity of human race in a socially acceptable manner. Now, there, that is the family's part doesn't end there with procreation, but it also becomes the responsibility of the family to transfer various values, family norms, societal norms, the constitutional values, etc., towards the younger ones. So it helps in the continuation of traditions, family customs, etc. Moreover, it becomes the duty of the family to correct any wrong behaviors on part of their children, not just correcting, but reasoning out to them why this is wrong and why it should not be continued. So everything has to be reasoned out to the kids, only then they will understand the negative impact of their actions. So What a child becomes later on in the society, to a great extent, is determined by the family and the family cultures, family backgrounds, etc. So, family has a long lasting impact on the life of an individual. So, marriage, uh, the success of marriage is not about compromise, but it is about understanding, accepting the people's differences, opinions, mutual sharing, caring, and more of open, personal, face to face interactions and intimate emotional bonding between the partners. So, all these can help in a mutual unity between the partners. It doesn't mean that there won't be any clashes, but it's more about how you reason out and how you come to a mutual understanding and cooperate. So, when we say about divorce, it has a lasting impact on the child, especially when the child is very young and couldn't differentiate or couldn't reason out why their parents separated. And not just the kid, in some point of time, it could also have an impact on the partners or the couples itself. So, when parents divorce, it impacts the child psychologically, and there will be adolescent adjustment problems, academic difficulties, no lower grades, school dropouts, and resorting to substance abuse, and further in their later life they could also practice risky sexual behaviors, and in general, even in their future life, there could be tendencies of instability in their marital life, and it could also further lead to a premature ending to their marital bond. And if the kids didn't receive any love, care, affection, etc., they would also become individuals with less sympathy, empathy, etc., and such aspects will be completely different or completely alien to those kids in some of the cases. And further, the partners, they may go through psychological strains, they may disorient from the work, and in some cases, they may end up committing suicide. So, the problem of today is lack of intimate psychological or emotional bonding between the parents, and lack of interaction, and lack of support, lack of attention towards their younger ones. When parents are frequently fighting, they have no time to look after their children's, and children get isolated within the framework of family. And especially when there are no grandparents to support, it also becomes difficult for children at the younger age to adjust to all these circumstances. And further, why relationships are dying today is because most of them are interested in trying to impress or trying to satisfy the social media friends with the things which they do not have. So basically, they are seeking attention, seeking appreciations from the social media comments, etc. And thus, they concentrate much on those part, keeping a very low interest in their own personal relations or improving their personal uh, interactions. And further, it could also be due to high sense of self-orientation and over expectations from each other. So it has become me or I than us or we. And it could also be said that the impact of the West is also taking on over the marital bonds. And today, we can also find in Indian societies the aspect of live-in relations. So this may either end up in marriage or may not end up in marriage, but the society has to cope to live with such changes, and there may be many more changes coming in the coming years or so. So, like the old saying goes, the family that dines together stays together. Now, this saying is more relevant in today's society, especially when both the parents are working and they do not interact much with their much with their children or the other members of the family. This dining time would give them that provision, at least for few hours or a few minutes, to have a direct and face-to-face interaction between their members. And it has to be noted that when you come for a family time, do away with your gadgets so that you get an opportunity to listen to each other's, to express yourself, and to be interactive. And it is one way to maintain the balance between work and family. So everyone feels like being wanted at that particular point of time. There could be certain sharings happening. So it could also help individuals, you know, to not to suppress their emotions, etc. So to certain extent, it can work.